All right. So week 7, obstacles. That's what we're talking about for this week. Uh, so you'll learn about dealing with outer obstacles in life. You will also learn about the comeback trail and overcoming obstacles. And then we'll see an example. We'll go through a personal example as well. And just to check in, have you started kind of using the coaching techniques?
I have, yeah, yeah. So I do
The 10
serve. And the way that I'm trying to ask questions more is it's a little bit different than what I'm used to. So trying to make sure that uh same thing like that you've already told me is I know that I kind of want an idea of what the answer should be, but asking the appropriate question on how to get it out of them first.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I also had lunch with a friend yesterday. She's actually like a licensed therapist, and we kind of like piggyback a little bit on like what some good questions are.
Awesome. Awesome. And then I hope uh you have like you scheduled a coaching session. Hope you get in that coaching session and you could, get that transcript going
Right. Yes,
with
I
that.
did bring it up to two friends at church.
Okay. Okay. Good.
Yeah. So I actually thought about one being an old coworker. So it's like one professional, and then one like Christian, I guess like sister. So
Okay. Awesome. Awesome.
if I don't use Roderick's.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Okay. All right. So yeah, last week we talked about um some of those inner dialogue errors, uh, and also identity. We discussed identity and how that plays a role in self-worth and the client's acceptance of their biblical identity, uh, will possibly positively affect everything in their life. So, but yeah, this week we'll look at just obstacles, how to get through those. And then right here, the breakthrough coaching model. So I'll take the first three, and if you could take the last three.
Okay.
All right, breakthrough coaching model. So you have awareness. Where is the client now? Assemble the real story needed to gain valuable insight and perspective. The key word is the real story. So you gotta keep, asking those questions, diving in, and getting that real story, not the fluff, not the surface level, but the deep, real story of where they are, truly. Vision. What is their specific goal? Specifically define their client goals, including the mission, meaning, and desired outcomes. And so you can spend a whole 2 or 3 sessions just trying to figure out what their vision is. Obstacles. What stands in the way? Expose and clearly define the inner and outer obstacles that block the client's progress. And that's what we're diving in that today is, diving into obstacles and trying to so like how do we navigate that when obstacles pop up?
Okay. And then support. What can support their success? The things the client needs to add or remove to help with their goals. And then strategy. What is the path to the goal? A detailed game plan that can be adjusted with gained clarity as the process progresses. And then we have actions. What are the next action steps? Getting commitments for regular small steps that will incrementally move the client forward.
All right, so let's hop into outer obstacles. So obstacles have many names. So they're not just when these words popped up, these mean obstacle right here. So some call them obstacles, some call them problems, roadblocks, some call them struggles, failures. disappointments, setbacks. Yeah, obstacles happen to everyone and they are normal. Yes, they are normal. They will pop up. So just know when you hear these different words, that's what we're talking about with obstacles.
Yeah, and on that topic too, you asked me if I've started to use a little bit of coaching techniques.
Mm.
One of my front desk girls, she's been a little bit overwhelmed,
Mm.
and I'm trying to ask, open-ended questions on how she's stuck and how she feels stuck and how she feels overwhelmed, and not like me seeing what she's doing because she's doing way too much at once. I think she might have a problem with like I don't want to say ADHD or like
Mm.
she jumps left and right, left and right, left and right, all over the place. So I guess another word would be overwhelmed or as to what's causing an obstacle.
Yeah. Yep.
But yeah, so I I thought about this course and this class and I was like, well, how do I restructure the way that I ask
Yeah.
instead of saying it how I feel should be the first thought process. So yeah.
And it's like, yeah, it starts out with, I mean, if you having just a conversation, it could be just like, how you feeling? How are you doing?
Hmm.
But still,
Yeah.
in conversation, avoiding the why,
Mm.
and avoiding the, advice given. But if you're trying to coach, in conversation, just asking how you doing and just letting them lead the discussion. You just diving in.
Right.
Because with that situation, you can ask them how they doing, and they go off on a whole 30 minute, an hour, just them talking of like how they're doing. And that's
Yeah.
fine, you know. They
Right.
just want somebody to check in and vent to. Um, that's good. That's good that you took that initiative and you saw that you seemed overwhelmed and you pursued. He was like, you felt something. And that's the
Right.
beautiful thing about being a coach because you have that intuition to
Hmm.
figure out what's going on,
Right.
somebody's feeling down. Like you just got something where you like, I can do something about that. I got
Hmm.
these tools that can help. So that's awesome that you did that. So yeah, so trouble is inevitable. Like we were saying, trouble and obstacles, they're gonna pop up. They're inevitable. So John 16:33, in this world you will have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world. So take heart, just knowing your heart that there is going to be trouble, but I have overcome. So trouble is inevitable. How your client responds to it is optional. So there's a choice. We all have choices, to look at the negative, look at the positive. Your client has a choice of being a victim minded, or solution minded. So instead of being surprised and down, your client should expect obstacles and be determined to overcome them. And so that's what you want to work towards with your client. It's not being a victim, being down, moping around all the time, but being confident in the solution, how to move forward. Life lessons. So obstacles hold life lessons about your limits, weaknesses, and inner desires. They force introspection and encourage personal growth and awareness. So embracing the pain will allow the life lesson to be learned. So there's pain either way. Pick your pain. The pain of avoiding the trouble or the pain of working hard to overcome it. So a strengthener. So the path to a better life is rarely a straight line and is often filled with obstacles. So learning to leverage those obstacles builds resilience and strength. So many Bible icons and present day success stories talk about adversity that was transformed into triumph. So various setbacks were bravely overcome and set the stage for amazing comebacks. The comeback trail. So right here, uh, deal with it versus complaining about it. Accept the obstacles are very normal. Accept that they are normal. Believe that you can overcome them. Don't tackle them all by yourself. Try to leave your emotions out of it. Analyze them and be solution minded. Persevere and don't give up. So, right here in James 1 2 through 4, it says, Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work so that you may mature and be complete, not lacking anything. So that's in the Bible. It's just saying make it through these different adversities and you're gonna be even stronger. You won't lack anything as you make it through these struggles, these troubles, these obstacles. That's the comeback. And that's what you're walking your client through. You walking your client through these steps. You trying to pinpoint, okay, what are they struggling with? Are they struggling with dealing with dealing with it versus and they're complaining about it? You know, how can you switch their mindset to not complaining, but looking at it at the big picture of why this is happening? So we're gonna go through some common obstacles that'll pop up. So this will help you right here. Those common obstacles. So things your client may say that's going on in their life is life altering events. So death in the family, divorce, those type of things you may have to, you know, get your client through. Many time demands. They're constantly saying, I'm busy, I'm busy, I'm busy, I'm doing this, and that. You have to get them to the mindset of like slowing down and prioritizing. Uh, many, many focus demands. Same thing, prioritizing. Distracting people. So just seeing like, okay, who is progressing, what friends are progressing me forward, what people are holding me back. You know, you trying to help point those things out for that person. Nagging health issues. You know, there might be some health issues where, like, okay, we trying to help them get on a plan, some type of healthy lifestyle plan, and you're coaching them on that. Poor organization, so you teaching them how to be more organized, how to be more get their priorities straight. You know, how to minimize their selections, those type of stuff. Lack of boundaries.
Oh, I think you somehow got muted.
Oh, am I still there? You hear me?
Yes. Last
Okay.
thing I heard was poor organization.
Well, yeah, yeah, poor organization, and then lack of boundaries. So lack of boundaries. This is a person that's constantly could constantly be saying yes to everything and not having any boundaries. You're trying to coach them on, you know, what to say no to. Lack of connections. Um, is probably a person that's, you know, hasn't had a lot of adventure in their life, and you're trying to get them like, okay, let's go out, let's get out there and you know, meet somebody new or get some new friends, you know, and stop being, you know, lonely. Get out of being a lonely state. So that could be a coaching of that. Lack of resources. So coaching people, letting them know the resources that they have around them, you know, letting them see their resourcefulness and seeing what God has put around them. Or lack of accountability. So they need constant check-ins. So with you as a coach, you know, they probably need help with that. That's an obstacle for them is them not being accountable to themselves and constantly failing themselves. And you're coaching them to put into action a routine of discipline, and you're helping them with that. So yeah, your forward progress seems to have stopped. What exactly is standing in your way right now? So that's a question that you could call out. That's how you call them out on one of these obstacles that you set an action item for them to get through this obstacle, and they're not progressing through it. But you have to talk to them of like, okay, what's standing in the way? Why didn't you accomplish this? And these are some more. So client clues. So here's some clues that you may not they may not say it, but you're going to see it. These are clues that you're going to see. So client feels stuck. That's an obstacle. Client lacks enthusiasm. That's an obstacle right there. Client resists taking action. Those are obstacles. Client seems fearful. Client seems distracted. Client is disorganized. Client is, like you said, overwhelmed. Obstacle.
There it is.
Yep. Client gets sidetracked all the time. So with this, you could,
That, yeah, that's her too.
yep. So this, you just say, you don't seem to be yourself today. Please share with me what you're going through today. So that's something you could, easily say it to her right there. Just
Oh, well, I did. I kind of got out of her. It's the anniversary of her grandfather's passing tomorrow.
oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, it's understandable.
So that was
Um,
that first one right there. That was the
mhm,
life altering event. So life
right.
altering event. Yeah.
Yeah.
So plus overwhelmed and sidetracked. Yeah. Be a combination of obstacles going on. But mainly just looking at these are things that can allow us to see barriers that the client has, but they may not be able to voice it, as an obstacle, but you'll see it, you know. So yeah, living without boundaries, types of boundaries not being honored. So values like honoring your personal values, physical honoring your personal space, sexual undesired acts of intimacy, emotional protecting your feelings, intellectual respecting beliefs and ideas, communication, what you want and don't, trust and safety, protection and honesty, energy, being allowed to recharge, financial, the handling of money and debt, and then time, respect for your schedule and time, and then people, who is okay and who is toxic. So this worksheet can be, real helpful to pinpoint, what obstacles you have or your client has. And right here, this is a good quote from Christopher McCluskey. He says, balance is not simply a matter of keeping all the balls in the air. It is taking time and having the discipline to set down some of the balls and not keep picking up additional things to do. So it's not a juggling act in your life. It's a thing where like you just have, you know, not too many things going on at once. Just knowing when to set things down and how much your capacity is. Imbalance causes one area of life to disrupt and possibly drain another area. So our worksheet gives a panoramic view of the client's life and often starts the conversation of, Sally, I noticed you had a score of 4 on health. Tell me more about that. What would it take to get you to, you know, up that level up into a 5? That's what these worksheets are good for, especially the scoring. So if
Right.
they score a 3, you just ask them, how can we get one level higher? How can we get to a 4?
Right.
What's that look like? So reserves. So no reserves or resources. A reserved life, a reserveless life is a life lived on the verge of depletion in one or more areas. Also, a reserveless life usually makes more withdrawals than deposits and is often on the verge of running on empty. And a resourceless life means you don't have what you need to succeed. A resourceless life is a deficit, and a deficit it needs to add additional resources or helpers. So reserve and resource deposits. So if you attempt to withdraw more money from a bank account than it has in it, you will be stopped by the bank and asked for the additional deposits. Your life has its own types of accounts like health, love, finance, faith, self belief, education, communication, family, time, energy, and more. Clients will often come to you wondering why they can't make a withdrawal from these areas in their life. It is because that life account is running on empty.
Yeah, that's well, go ahead.
No, yeah, you go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say, that's a lot of the times that I say whenever I speak to Christians, primarily Christians, but also too, they don't have to be Christians either. But it's super important, like what you pour into yourself, because you're gonna pour into others, 99.99% of the times. So if you don't replenish after you pour into others with, healthy things, spiritual things, life-giving things, fruitful things to help replenish what you already give, you're going to be drained. So obviously a Christian like understands it more, um, because obviously it's important about what you bring in. It's what you also put out because you're going to be put out by lifting up one another and helping each other like edify one another and, sharpen your blades with, a brother in the Lord or a sister in the Lord. But then the world, if they're not Christian and they're secular, they word it as, oh, I'm an empath,
Mm,
an empath.
yeah,
So I my energy gets drained and I need to, um, recharge with the sun or my crystals. So it's like I'm an empath, but also in a way it's like, well, no, it's like what are you have to also like be fed spiritually too by healthy, righteous, and holy things. I mean, I don't say that to, well, sometimes I do say it to a person that's not really a true believer. Sometimes it opens an eye or it opens their eyes in a sense a little bit, but then sometimes they just don't like understand it because they just glorify the creation itself, like the rock itself, the crystal itself, um, and their God is the universe. So it's like, well, you're still having to like feed yourself spiritually and literally. So you're still giving out others some form of your quote energy
yeah,
in order for you to have to be absorbed more. But yeah, so that's kind of the same topic.
exactly.
Uh,
But yeah, like I
yeah,
said, it could be perverted. Yeah, it could be perverted to
yeah,
oh, I'm getting this, energy from this crystal, but really
yeah,
all the energy is coming from God.
exactly.
Every breath we take is from God.
Yeah,
When we
yeah,
breathe, we're saying God. Every time we
exact.
breathe.
Yes, absolutely.
So it's
Yep.
just like, but you just hope that they have that other people have that revelation, like
Right.
of God. You just don't know when they're gonna come to it. It's gonna come in this life or the next.
Right.
They gonna know
Yeah.
it's up for.
They'll realize one day. I mean, I hope I can be there for it. But
Yeah,
I mean, as long as I poured into their spirit as much as I could, and maybe I was a Jesus to them for the first time,
yeah,
then and someone else can be another Jesus again, and also water that seed. Well, God will water it, but each person plants a seed and sows a seed, and it's up to God to like water that same seed to you
exactly.
know reveal Himself in
Yeah.
a way that only He can. So
Exactly. All you could do is sow. You just could, put
Right,
your seed out there. If
right, right.
they take it, however it lands on their heart. You just hope it sinks into their heart. But
Hmm.
all you can hope. But yeah, making deposits into their life accounts means they will have the resources available to them when they need to make a withdrawal. They can respond. So, like you were saying, with Christians, that we pour out so much, so much, so much into others. It's like we
Hmm.
have to make deposits, into ourselves, into our time. But yeah, making regular deposits is a powerful support tool for just about any coaching situation. So, tiny deposits over time can yield big results for your client. So, what a client feeds will thrive. What a client starves will greatly suffer. So this is a big one because as Christians we should be getting our time, and that's a
Hmm.
big challenge for a lot of people. It's like every day getting your time with God, and that's what we're trying to coach them towards. It's like having that disciplined life, having that routine life of constantly checking in with God, constantly abiding in God, um, and it definitely takes. Sometimes it takes a good coach to get somebody there. You know, but yeah, that's what is living intentionally and being proactive in your life. That's what we're trying to get into.
Right,
Living
right.
intentionally. Yeah. So we're gonna hop into the example. So balance coaching example right here. And I'll read this. I'll read the first page. We'll go back and forth on each of the pages. So client. I feel really overwhelmed. Oh, this sounds familiar.
Hmm.
I feel really overwhelmed. Work takes so much of my time that I barely have time for my wife and family. I just feel out of balance. Coach says, I hear you. That sounds very frustrating. So, if coach is validated right there. When you say feel out of balance, what does that look like for you? The client says, I'm working long hours. And by the time I get home, I'm exhausted. I don't have time. I don't have the time or energy to do the things I enjoy. My family time feels rushed, and I feel guilty about that. So, any takeaways from this first part?
I like how the coach, I mean, as you said, like they validate and repeat what they say, and then it makes them pretty much answer and reflect on themselves.
Yeah.
So it's like, what does it look like as to why you feel that way? And it's not just your typical like psychiatrist that's like, well, how do you feel about that?
Hmm.
Or it's just, well, no, like, what does it look like for you? It's not really like, I mean, it's a simple question, but it gets them to look inward.
Exactly. Exactly. Introspection.
Mhm.
It's about introspection. Yeah. So I know this is a yes no question, but you could ask like, is there a way to change your schedule? The client be like, yes. And then you could ask, be like, great. How can we formulate a plan to have flexibility at home? So that's something you could ask too. And then what other things could be, taking you away? All right, you go ahead, take this.
Coach, it sounds like work is taking priority right now, but other important areas of your life, like self-care and family, aren't getting enough attention. Wouldn't you agree? Client, yes, exactly. Coach, if you could create a more balanced life, what exactly would that look like for you? Give me details.
Mm. You see that? They could just
Yeah, that make it seem so simple.
yeah, exactly, exactly. But as you
Yeah.
coach, as you do it, you know how to
Hmm.
just say those questions and just sit back and just let them go. Sit
Yes.
back and listen, actively listen. Sit back and
Hmm.
actively listen. So
But it's asking those open-ended questions to allow them to
yeah,
you just have some kind of overflow of the mouth moment.
yeah, yeah. All
And that's
right.
also it's also biblical because what's the verse? Out of the mouth the heart speaks.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Exactly. And that's what you're trying to hear. Exactly. You're trying to hear their heart. You're trying to see where they
Hmm.
are. And that's that first piece. It's like where is your client right now? Getting into
Right.
the real story. We're not gonna get to the real story if they just saying a little bit here, a little bit there. You want them
Hmm.
to speak. It's 80% the client speaking, just 20% you. 80% of the client.
I gotta work on that. Yeah. Yeah.
Yep, yep. So client, I would have clear boundaries with work, and I wouldn't bring it home with me as much. I would use the extra time to take care of myself so I could give my family the best version of me. We would have more family fun. Coach says, that's a great vision. Encouragement. So you get that encouragement, affirmation. That's a great vision. What's one small step you could take this week to move forward in achieving more balance? Boom. Maybe I could set a hard stop at work, like leaving the office at a set time instead of staying late so often. So what's something good you saw here from the coach?
Yeah, it's like I like where it says just what's one small step
Mhm.
because obviously it's something attainable. Like it's putting it in their uh shoot or
Court.
what's the phrase? Like their court. Yeah. Yeah, their court. So it's putting the ball in their court. Like, well, what's one small step? One thing that you can think of that will help you move forward. And that's the thing is like it made them think, okay, well, I can do a hard stop. That's also, I mean, obviously that was my first thought. It's
Yeah,
like, well, you're working long hours. How do you make the choice to work less hours instead of saying, oh, well, why don't you work less hours? But no, it's like, well, how do you make them like initiate that they know that that's what they need?
exactly. You get them to start, getting those options going. You want them to say
Hmm.
those options. Yeah. And then you could ask, like, is this something you truly need to do? What does your day look like? Some other things you could ask in here. And then right here, coach, that sounds like a great place to start. What would help you stick to that boundary? I could set, you see that? That's that question right there.
Yeah.
What would help you stick to that boundary?
Hmm.
I could set an alarm. That's how dive into getting more detailed, when it's like, okay, they said this, but now how specifically you gonna do this? Uh,
Yeah.
to set an alarm on my phone as a reminder. I could also let my team know I'm leaving at that time regularly. The coach says, fantastic. How do you think making this change will impact your life? I will be more in control of my time. I will be more intentional about spending quality time with my family. What's some good things you saw there?
I mean, or he or she, or the coach, made them create their own actionable item about just simply setting an alarm and making a tangible choice to make the change other than just, well, having it be an actionable item for next week or like the next visit. It's like, well, no, like what's one small step that you can do today
Yeah,
that you'll start to implement moving forward. Now,
yeah,
it's also too, it's like, well, when he says, I could let my team know I'm leaving at that time regularly. It's like, well, why wouldn't everyone just leave at the same time? 4 or 5 or,
Mm,
but that's probably a little bit more convoluted. It's like, well, what time are you leaving? Or why don't the whole team all leave at once
mm,
and you not have to work late? Or, but I don't know if that's a little bit too deep, but it's just the simple thing that says, how do you think this change will impact you? For, because you want more time with your family. So if you proactively set an alarm and leave, how will it affect
yeah.
and change your life with your family?
Yep. Yep.
It's almost like it's assertive, but it's not like demanding,
Exactly.
if that makes
I
sense. It's
mean,
assertive.
you start going
Yeah.
into that part of like, do you see any obstacles here? Like, if you're doing this goal, do you see any obstacles with you doing this? And you just let them like explore in their mind of like, oh, this obstacle could pop up. This obstacle.
Hmm.
They may say that what you were saying, like there's certain obstacles that could potentially pop up. Then they'll get more even more detailed, like, oh, I could do this to avoid this obstacle.
Hmm.
You know, we dive into it. But no, that's good. And then the question after this, you could ask like, what about spending quality time is important to you? So after the client says, I will be more in control of my time, I will be more intentional about spending quality time with my family. And then you can ask that question, what about spending quality time is important to you?
Right.
Yeah. Then I could take this last one. Coach, that's wonderful. I'll check with you next time to see how it's going. You're creating a new habit and it will take a bit time to become consistent. Client, yes, please keep me accountable. It will motivate me to do it. Coach, I'm excited to see how this works for you. Please keep me posted. And coach, be thinking about other small steps you can take, and we will address those next time. Boom, end the session.
Right. So it's almost like it's foreshadowing to already having more steps to to try to make more change.
Yep, yep, exactly. But yeah, but it's so much good stuff here. I just loved the encouragement throughout. The encouragement from the coach throughout. That's big. Is
Yeah.
the coach have to stay encouraging, and but at the same time, there's encouragement. You gotta know when to encourage and know when to challenge. You challenge when there's some setback going on, when they're being pulled by something. They're not completing the action items. That's when you challenge them. When there's a stop in progress, that's when you know when to challenge.
Hmm.
Okay, we gotta see what's going on. Why are we doing this cycle? What's going on? What's going on with this cycle? But yeah, harmony instead of balance. I've heard that before too. Just having a harmony or a rhythm. Just teaching them how to do that. Have a rhythm of life. Because some people don't like the balance term. You know,
Right.
like
And also, some people want change, but they don't like change. So,
yeah,
yeah, that might be a little bit of a challenge too.
yeah,
But obviously, they're going to want some form of coaching to help them get to that change.
exactly. And that's what we talked about, having that fixed mindset. So getting them out of that fixed mindset,
Hmm.
get into a more, agile mindset and willing to move and change and seeing the benefits of changing, getting them to agree to that. And that, like I said, that comes from you asking those right questions and them, getting there. You know, it takes time.
Hmm. Yes. I mean,
All
and
right.
also too is like at that point or at this point, if they're going to invest in coaching, they're going to want to get help in order to change.
Yeah.
You know, proactively. So,
Exactly. And you're there to keep them accountable. You like, all right, we're gonna meet. You're gonna set the time table. We're gonna meet once a week, every 2 weeks, and I'm gonna keep
mhm,
keep you accountable. You know, you that coach that's gonna keeping them progressing forward. You're gonna call them out if they're not progressing forward. You know,
right.
all right. Homework. So this homework, you're gonna read chapters 9 to 14. Well, really, I think when the last homework was 9 to 11.
9 to 11. Yeah. So
Yeah, that's what
just
you're
12, 13, 14.
yeah, you're just going up to 14 now. Then you're doing the uniqueness worksheet. Looking at that. Well, no, that was this past one too, but it's just combined with the last one. So you got, but to add on, you got the interest and style assessment, and then the balance worksheet. So you'll see those in the portal.
Yeah. I was kind of confused because I mean, not really confused, but I left my book in the car.
Hmm.
So then I went online through the portal, and then I was like, well, hold on, what was homework? Because of the book, I also do my church notes. So I put these notes. I mean, I think it like correlates, obviously.
Oh, okay.
Um, so you said it was 9 to 11, but then week 7 said read chapters 13, 14. I was like, wait, why would we jump ahead?
Oh, okay, okay.
And the portal. So I just double checked with my notes, and it was 9 to 11. So
Okay.
that's just what I did because I almost did 13, 14, but then I didn't want to skip 9 to 11.
Yeah, it's just we have updated slides. So you're looking at the
Hmm.
very latest, like I said, the very latest slides, and then the portal got updated too. So it's just some slides got moved like week four
Oh,
to week 8, or and then like week 6 went to week 4, that type of thing. So it's just
okay.
so
No
yes,
worries.
yes.
No worries.
But no, that's good that you was able to figure it out.
Hmm.
And then take a note of these questions right here. So these questions are most likely be on the exam after week 10. So why are personal values important in coaching? Why do personal needs different from personal values? So these are the values questions. We went through this before. But how can good personal values compete for conflict? So just calling that out.
Hold on.